There's a question from Mary Lou from Canada. And she asks, what is your opinion of entheogens, ayahuasca, peyote, San Pedro mushrooms, and sacred plant medicines? And have you experienced any of them?
I haven't experienced that much. I've experienced a few. Now, Bashar talks about that a little bit, and because of the laws that exist on our planet, he's never going to encourage us to break a law. But he's willing to talk about the idea of what these kinds of effects are, why these plants exist. And he basically sees them as teachers. The things that grow naturally from the earth that have those kinds of effects are looked at by him as teaching tools, as teachers, as aspects of our collective consciousness that can give us the ability to understand how to connect to other levels of consciousness, other dimensions of reality. But he also expresses that, just like any teacher, when the teacher has taught you how to achieve that state, ultimately you don't need the teacher anymore. You can just create that state within yourself. That's what we're supposed to learn from the teachers. So it's not about always, constantly, forever having to use those substances. It's about using them, if we use them, in whatever way it's appropriate for us to use them, in a way that teaches us that this is all coming from within us anyway, and that we have the ability to achieve these states of beings ultimately without needing the permission slip of the teacher to do so, because we're ultimately our own permission slip. But, he's saying they can be beneficial depending on how you use them, if you use them with integrity, and don't allow yourself to give your power over, which then simply creates the idea of addiction. Whether it's physical or emotional or mental or what have you. The idea of addiction is that we start giving our power away and using things as a crutch. The idea of using them in a self-empowered way is that we ultimately realize we don't need them anymore to achieve the state that we need to achieve.
Well, that begs the question, though, how do you know, if the plants are teachers, how do you know how many classes you need?
Well, again, when you approach it, I think, in an appropriate, respectful manner, the information that you need comes along with it, and you suddenly know when you need to graduate.
Okay.
It becomes part of the lesson.
Okay.
Just in the same way that if you go to school, you know when the last day of school is, you know when you're ready to move on to the next grade.
Yes.
So it kind of contains its own self-graduation ceremony, and you move on in a natural way because it's not about staying in the same place. The momentum of learning something like that, or from any source, is that it also contains information that propels you to the next level. Otherwise, it's not really doing the job it's designed to do, because it's about accelerating, it's about evolving, it's about growing.
Okay.
And therefore, if you're not growing, you're kind of not paying attention to the lesson.
True. There's a question from Tron from Norway. And
Tron.
he asks, can high doses of psilocybin, ayahuasca, and pure DMT potentiate the functions of the pineal gland and actually turn it into a portal for travel in higher realms and dimensions in a way that it is as real as being here in this 3D reality?
That's probably more of a question for Bashar. I know the pineal gland is connected to the production of DMT, and I'm sure there is some connection to what's being asked there, but that is of such a specific scientific nature that Bashar would probably be the only one to answer that, because that's beyond my knowledge.
Understood. Dan from the USA has this question. He was recently listening to Bashar's information about the 13th step, and he hopes it's going to help him to quit smoking.
Okay.
And so he found the whole idea very profound. It floored him, he said, and it took him a long time to try and make any sense of what it meant. So his question is, when Bashar channels these revelations through you, and you hear about them later, do they affect you the same way they would affect anyone else who's hearing them for the first time?
They can, although what people need to understand is that I actually receive the concept before they do, because the voice coming out of me is a secondary translation. I'm receiving the concept directly first so it can get translated to you. Now, I may receive it in a very different way than the audience receives it, but I get it first because I'm standing right in the stream. I'll relate to it perhaps in a different way than an audience member might. So I don't necessarily know, it's possible that sometimes an audience member may understand it more clearly before I do. But by the time I've processed whatever the concept is that sinks into me, that's how I'll understand that. I don't need necessarily to listen to the recording to understand it, because I'm getting it directly in a telepathic download in the way I need to, that may be very different than what's going on in the translation for another person asking a question. For me, the channeling experience, and this is one of the things that we explain more fully in the documentary, the channeling experience is like falling into a very deep daydream. I know there's something going on, but I don't really hear the words in the same way that, if you're really lost in a daydream and somebody walks in the room and they go, Nicole, Nicole, they have to call your name like 3 times before you even know that somebody's calling your name. It's kind of like that.
Okay.
The words might as well be happening in another room going on, but it's just very muffled. I'm having this daydream experience of concepts and images and feelings, and it's very dynamic and very active. And I know that concepts are sinking into me into the way I need them, but I don't necessarily know exactly how they're being delivered to the person in the translation. So I do get the understandings, and I am able to build on those understandings to the point where I feel at this point I have a pretty clear understanding of his concepts on a very deep level. And in fact, one of the things I think I'm going to be doing in 2016 is actually teaching a class myself to allow people to really spend enough time to get much, much more deeply into some of Bashar's concepts, where we have 2 hours to discuss one principle, where that doesn't happen. That's not available in a channeling event. So I'm very excited about doing that and really getting much deeper with people into the nuances and the specifics of a lot of Bashar's principles by teaching a class myself, now that I feel I've absorbed enough understanding to be able to explain a lot of those concepts on my own after only 31 years that it took me to do so. But it takes time to absorb those things, I know, because a lot of the perspectives that he delivers are very different than the way we're taught to think on Earth. Some of the things that he delivers are almost literally backwards from the way that we've been taught to think, and upside down and inside out from the way we've been taught to think. So it takes a while for our minds to really kind of wrap themselves around a lot of these concepts.
Yes.
So again, that's why I'm really looking forward to being able to have this class and spend more time really picking these concepts apart in a way that will really give people a very deep understanding of them, and they can make them practical tools for themselves, in a very, very strong way.
Subscribe and watch part 3 on YouTube.
So he's asking, when was he expecting that prediction to occur?
Well, first let me say something about prediction.